Hey guys, this is Jsnow with our first ever Dimir. First ever, deck tech for you guys. So this is a Dimir mill, and it's about $100, $300 depending on what you want to put in, what you don't want to put in. And it's a pretty fun mill deck. So let's go into it and show you guys what it has. So it has 2 copies of Mnemonic Wall. It's a 0/4 defender, which allows you to, return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. So that's really good for getting your mill cards back. But it is pretty high cost, so if you want to replace these instead, if you don't like waiting all day for these cards, you can, put in a lowered wall, like a lower cost blue wall, and that would also work. But because it returns the instant sorcery, that's why it's in here. Next is 3 Omen Speakers. You can do 3 to 4 Omen Speakers, and these allow you to scry 2, which is really good in case you're getting landlocked or something like that, so that's the reason I have those in here. Next card we have is 3 Drowner Initiate, and what this does is whenever a player casts a blue spell, you may pay 1, and if you do, the target player puts the top 2 cards of his library into the graveyard. So basically you go play this, and any blue spell you play, which is almost your entire deck pretty much, you'll be able to mill 2, and if you're playing against somebody who's also playing blue, this will be absolutely devastating to them. So it's also a great anti-blue hate card, or whatever you want to call it. Next card, I wish I had a couple more of these, so I would suggest running at least maybe 2 of these minimum. I don't have 2, unfortunately. Is Jace's Phantom. So it's a 1 cost 1/1 flying, and it gets +4/+4 as long as your opponent has 10 or more cards in the graveyard. So that's really good, and it becomes a big beat stick. I have Delver Secrets in here. It flips when you reveal an instant or sorcery, but this card's kind of just because I don't have another Jace's Phantom, so this is really optional card, Delver Secrets. And now next card, if you can't win by mill, you'll win by beating them down pretty hard. So this card, it's a 5 cost, and its power and toughness is equal to all the cards in your opponent's graveyard. And whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals the top card of his or her library until he or she reveals a land card, then puts those cards into his or her graveyard. So not only is this an awesome mill, by the time you get this out, this thing should be at least a 10/10 or more. So this is a huge threat. So right now I run 2. I have also the promo version, which looks absolutely cool. You could do maybe 4, but it would really depend on what you're running as far as your sorcery base, because you do have this deck's only problem is staying alive long enough. So trying to wait on these is a little bit hard, but when you do get it out, it's super satisfying. Next card we have Mana Leak. Yeah, I'll just go. I don't have them actually sorted, so I guess for my next video I'll actually remember to sort these things. Now it seems like we only have 1. So 1 Mana Leak. It's basically just a counter spell. They have to pay 3 to counter it, so that's really easy. Uncovered Clues. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 instant or sorcery cards and put them in your hand, and the rest on the bottom of the deck. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I only run 1. Increasing Confusion. This can also be another pretty good card to mill out the deck. Target player puts X cards on top of their library, and it also has Flashback, and it doubles the amount, so you can basically cast it twice for about 3 times the mill. Next card, I only have 1 of these. I would definitely suggest, depending on what type of decks you're playing, like any search decks or Eldrazi decks, Archive Trap, where if it's a 5 cost, but if your opponent searches his deck, you can play this for 0, and they put the top 13 cards of their library into the graveyard. That's absolutely insane. If you can get a bunch of these are kind of expensive. These are really good. Another card, this went up a little bit in price, so now it's around like 4 to 5, I think. I got these around like $3. Is Mind Funeral, and this is very good. This is one of the win conditions in the deck, because your opponent has to reveal cards until he reveals 4 land cards. So if you're playing against any deck where they kind of like searched out all their lands, they're going to die pretty quickly to Mind Funeral, because they're going to have to keep milling until they reveal a land. And I actually won a match because of that, because, they were playing some ramp green or something like that, so they already had all their lands on the field, so they were just going through their whole entire deck, just trying to look for lands. So we run, how many Mind Funerals? 1, 2, and Just two. Two is kind of enough. You can run four. Actually, I kind of would suggest running four, but 2 to 4 is good enough. We have a copy of Duress. This is kind of like a budget card to Inquisition of Kozilek. Allows you to, what do you call it, discard a non-creature or non-land card. So we run one of those. Tome Scour. This is kind of optional. Target player puts the top 5 cards of his or her library into the graveyard. It's only a 1 cost, so it's pretty good. Pretty budget too. Oh, we run 2 Duress, so here's another Duress. Dimir Charm, I think I saw another one. This is definitely a great card for getting rid of low-cost threats, since it can destroy a target creature with 2 or less. You can also counter a spell, or mill them even more. I would almost never use the mill effect. You always want to be using this to counter or destroying a creature with 2 or less, so you definitely don't want to mill with that. Dream Twist, this is kind of like the same as Tome Scour, but it has flashback, but it does a little bit less cards, 3 cards instead. So I run 1, 2... what do you call it? 2 of those, and actually it seems like I run 4 Tome Scours. I think Tome Scour is probably the better card, but who knows. Inquisition of Kozilek, this basically you remove any card from their hand that's 3 or less. This card's really expensive, but it's definitely a great card to have. If you can't afford to pick up any of these, then either duress or transgress the mind or any of those mill spells. I mean, any of those spells that get rid of hand is really good. But if you can get your hands on these, definitely get your hands on these. So we run, I think, just 1. No, actually 2, because the modern event deck, which kind of looks like this. I actually have it to decide. It's like a box that comes in that kind of looks like this. Modern event deck has 2, so it's pretty good. Next card, this is a funny card. Jace's Erasure. So I only run 1. It's an enchantment, and whenever you draw a card, you may have target player put top 2 cards of his or her library into the graveyard. So you could play draw spells, like for example, Divination, which I have here, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Divination, and then you can make your opponent mill while you draw, so that's pretty cool. I just like running 1. Death's Approach. So if you're fighting any like big creature decks or anything like that, this is awesome. So I only run 1 because I don't face that many major threats. But what do you call it? You can run definitely 4 of this. And basically the enchanted creature gets -X, where X is the number of creature cards in the controller's graveyard. And since you're a mill deck, basically this thing will be hitting for like -10 plus, so you can get rid of pretty much almost any creature with this, so it's definitely an awesome spell. Mind Grind. I haven't actually been able to use this, but each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals X land cards, and puts all cards revealed this way into his or her graveyard. X can't be 0. So this is kind of like a semi-weaker version of, what was it, Mind Sculpt, I think it was? Or, I can't even find the card. It's like a weaker version of Mind Funeral. So I would kind of rather just play Mind Funeral, but I don't think I have another one, so Mind Grind is kind of like a semi-budget option. But I would rather get Mind, the other one. Thoughtsieze, another great card. This is kind of the same as Inquisition, except you pay 2 life to do it. So, but it doesn't have any cost on it, so you can get rid of any 4 or greater cost creatures or lands, or not lands, creatures or sorceries. So this is a really great card. If you could pick up a bunch of these, I would suggest it. Psychic Strike, this is pretty cool. It's you counter target spell, and its controller puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into the graveyard, so it's just a counter. We actually have 2 of those. Here's another Death's Approach, so actually I run 2 of those. I'll make sure for the next deck attack I have this all in order. Doomblade, just as a creature removal. And Pilfered Plans. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into the graveyard and draw 2 cards. So this is definitely good with Jace's Erasure. So that's why I have one of them, and also I do need some kind of draw power. So it's pretty good. Alright, our land base. So we have 21 lands. So we have Drowned Catacombs, which enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or swamp. So of course you'll be running some islands and swamps. I think I run about 7 of each. You have Evolving Wilds, just in case we need to shuffle our deck. Like if we're getting really bad draws, this is basically just use the shuffle. Dismal Blackwater is a budget card, budget land. And just some islands and swamps. So the land base is pretty much up to your budget. So you can get a bunch of Drowned Catacombs, or excuse me, or whatever you want. But Yeah, land base is really optional. You can even just do islands and swamps, but your deck will be a little bit weaker. Now let's talk about a few optional cards. So divination, if you're lacking card draw or you can't seem to get to your lands or whatever, divination is definitely a very good choice. Paranoid delusions. I took this out only because you're not really attacking with that many creatures, but it is decent. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into the graveyard, and then you could cipher this, which means you exile it onto a creature, and every time that creature attacks, this effect activates. So it is useful, but not as useful in this deck. Another is Tome Scour. We have Mind Sculpt, where it's the removes put the top 7 cards into the library into the graveyard, so you can run those. And then there's also this card, which is pretty cool, Coerced Confession. And target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into the graveyard. Draw a card for each creature, put it into the graveyard that way. So you can get some insane draw for this, and of course if you have Jace's Erasure and you get a bunch of cards, you get a bunch of card draws, that's going to be pretty deadly. So that's my Dimir Mill deck. If you guys have any suggestions for future deck techs, I'm obviously going to work on the order, because I didn't have the order right. I got to get everything together. So feel free to subscribe for more Magic the Gathering deck techs as I can make them, and I'll see you guys next time.